Hello and welcome to Metro Home Theater Tech Tips. I'm Brent McCall.
I'm Adam Rogers.
And it is a Friday afternoon, and once again you hear our 3 o'clock, please do not stand too close to anybody without your mask on, social distancing warning.
Right.
So what do we got today, Adam?
Well, today's episode is actually brought to you by the letter C.
Why is it brought to you by the letter C?
It's brought to you by the letter C because of HDMI Construction.
Ooh.
Right. Okay, so now, in particular, the product that we're going to be talking today, of course, is going to be a broad spectrum about HDMI cables as a whole. However, the one product that we are brought to you by today is actually our Velox line of passive HDMI cables.
Okay.
Brent, give me a quick rundown of the passive HDMI cables and their capabilities.
Well, the nice thing about a passive HDMI cable, obviously, is there is no electronics. So you don't have to worry about the interaction with bandwidth, with equalization settings, all the stuff that's involved in an active cable, whether it's a copper HDMI cable or an AOC. The advantage, short distance wise, particularly with the Velox cables, is that we can go to 48 gigabits all the way up to 2 meters now.
Right. Which
is pretty darn impressive when you realize that 48 gigabits is a whole lot of data down a piece of wire that's not overly large, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of information that we're trying to pack down these cables. So, which is actually part of our discussion today and what we're going to be talking about. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and dive right in. But
well, I actually see something here sitting in the middle of the table. It looks like a snake.
Yeah. So this is actually really cool, and as always, everybody who's checking in with the video today, thank you so much as always. And if you have any questions or any comments about what we're talking about today, please feel free to put them in the chat or in the comments section below. As always, we are, if you're coming in after the fact and you're seeing this as a recording, leave your questions and comments down in the comment section. We do monitor that as well. And if you have anything that you want us to talk about during the live stream today, leave it in the chat, even if it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But as always, if it is, that's great. We'll go ahead and talk about it as well.
Subscribe, like us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and to make it a little bit easier on our contact information, we actually put it on the big screen behind us today.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that way you can have a chance to get in touch with us if you need to. Of course, you can contact me through the tech support line here, which is 386-492-8584. Or you can email me at adamr@metrohometheater.com. And then, of course,
I'm available at 866-839-9187, extension 2203. And if I'm not here, that will find me.
Yep, exactly. So with all that said, we're going to go ahead and dive in and talk about the cable construction. Now, what we are talking about is, and you made of note of
the snake.
Our little snake here, our statue, our art piece.
The cobra.
Yep, the cobra. So what is this, Brent? Because I found this while going through a box of stuff that was labeled old. And so
what, did it say Brent on it?
Yeah, I was going to say you were inside the box. So, I mean, you know, there we go.
That's the box over there. It still says Brent 2 months later that you were going to take home.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So with this here, this is an older cable that we had a couple years ago.
More than a few.
More than a few. And so tell me what it is and why it's
in the early days of HDMI. When DPL first started doing their thing, they actually did it with 5 different levels of performance, 1 to 5. It wasn't a DPL certification, yes or no. It was actually 5 different levels.
Sure.
You know, kind of the gold, platinum, titanium, unobtainium, and unknownium.
Yep.
And a 5 was considered the best possible cable that you could ever have, and DPL was very, very tough on getting a 5. This was the only 1 meter cable that ever got a 5. This series, which is the Platinum series from Ethereal, was the only 1 meter cable that ever got a 5 from DPL.
Yeah.
Now, it was not an easy cable to build. You see the fact that it's been sitting like this for a couple of years.
Yeah, so
in that shape.
This has actually been in this position for 2 years almost, going on 2 years anyways, on a shelf by my desk. So how?
Well, there's a couple of things involved in that. First is shielding, and we're going to cover shielding because it's very, very important to an HDMI cable. The second thing is it is solid silver construction, no copper in this, so we had maximum bandwidth. And the dielectric, there's a lot that went into this particular cable, and a lot that we learned with this cable that now belongs in this cable.
In our Velox
line. The Velox line, yes. So the Platinum, now, this cable, I believe, now it's been a long time.
Right.
But as I recall, this cable was $1,500 retail.
Yes.
And came in a very nice little Halliburton case that was beautiful.
Pretty much our most expensive cable,
yes,
correct?
it was without question our most expensive. But what we learned in this series is in this series, and
This one.
yes.
This one's actually something else.
Oh,
there you go.
thank you.
But we'll talk about that.
As you have listed down here that they don't yet see on the overhead is the good, the bad,
me. Oh, me. Okay.
and the ugly.
The ugly. So
It doesn't say old.
Hey, DJ, great to see you in the chat. Thanks for checking in with us. So with this cable here, the solid silver inside of it.
Yes.
Now, we went crazy with this.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just solid silver. It's 24 gauge.
Right.
Solid silver. This is the size you normally saw on a 100-foot HDMI cable.
Right.
At the time. But we did a half, a 1, a 2, I think up to 6 meters on this series.
Right.
And they were all 24 gauge.
Yep.
Tremendous performance. If you still own one of these,
Yeah.
there's nothing better available ever.
Yeah, great piece of technology that we built. Now
It just was not a convenient piece of
and
technology.
here's the thing: it still works today.
Oh, as good as anything out there. It will absolutely match what this does.
Yep.
However, this will absolutely match what that did.
Right.
And the difference is we no longer are a 2x4 that you're trying to cram into the rack. Now we can do it with the flexibility you need on a day-to-day installation.
Exactly. So we've talked about the good, and the good, of course, is honestly all of our cables.
Absolutely,
when
since
we look
day
at,
one.
Yeah, since day one. But this is like the best of the cables that we've ever made. And our Velox line, of course, is taking that tradition and we've extended it out into those cables as well. Now let's get into the bad. So particularly this one here,
Which has been hanging around here a while, and it says
has.
bad on it.
It does. In fact, this one was kind of interesting. This one came from a local cable provider. This is one of the included HDMI cables that they have with it. Now, this cable worked really well for the consumer that had it in their installation, and everything was perfectly fine. Everything was working great. Now, an interesting thing about this is that everything was great for years, and then all of a sudden, the audio got real quiet. And so the person was thinking that there was something wrong with the device, something wrong with their audio on the TV, whatever it could be. So it just so happened that they had an extra HDMI cable. In fact, I believe it was one of our MHX series HDMI cables, and they replaced it with an MHX, and all of a sudden the audio came back. So there was actually something going on with this cable.
Wait, isn't digital just digital?
Oh, well, I mean, depends on who you talk to. Depends on who you ask. So no, it's not, because here's the thing: with this lower quality cable, what's happened is that over time, something has caused it to not have the best bandwidth capabilities, which is interesting.
Well,
because
actually, it's more than bandwidth, and here's why.
Sure.
Because audio and video travel on the same feeds.
Right.
Video still worked. What changed was the audio level. Now, what controls the audio volume level?
You tell me.
EDID.
Okay. I did not know that.
So there is a failure in the EDID in this. Now, when you're looking at EDID, there's a lot of questions. Who are you? What are you? What's your resolution? When were you made? What firmware? What bit rate? What gamma setting? What subsampling? Do you want audio? If so, what kind? And audio delay, lip sync.
Yep.
And audio output.
Yep.
All of these things have to be negotiated.
Yes.
Now, audio is the first thing to fail on purpose.
Okay.
It fails on purpose to let you know, by intent, by HDMI, to let you know there is a problem in the system. It's not just, oh my God, it's not working. It's the idiot light on the dashboard.
Right. Something to say that you can still drive. You can still go somewhere.
A little bit.
A little bit. But
there's
something's
a problem.
wrong. Something's happening.
And
So
that's what's going on there. Now, and again, it's funny because it's not uncommon. Well, it's an HDMI cable. It should just work, right?
sure.
But you changed it out and something changed.
Yes. So obviously there was something going on with this cable in its construction for that actually has caused some kind of buildup or something, maybe a soldering point has created too much of a resistance inside of this cable. In fact, that we're still in the midst of testing this cable to find out exactly what it is, because we would like to know. And honestly, this is one of those things where, have you guys out in the field ran into anything like this, where it's not like you're losing picture, but something weird is happening with an HDMI cable. And in that case, you may have something happening and you may not have thought that it was the HDMI cable. Try it. Try swapping out the HDMI cable, putting one of our MHX or one of our VLOX line HDMI cables in there and see if it makes a difference for it. I do want to find out exactly what's going on with this so that we can apply that knowledge to whatever else we have going forward.
One of the things to remember is an HDMI cable is not a bottle of wine.
Right.
It is not going to get better as it ages.
No, no, it's not.
Copper construction, solder construction, terminal construction, over time it gives out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a lot of things involved in that. When you look at an HDMI terminal, and I'm going to grab this.
You want to?
Yeah, go ahead and give me an overhead. That is a male receptacle.
Correct.
I know it looks female, but that is actually the male receptacle because there's something in the middle of it.
Correct.
This is the female receptacle because it's open.
Correct.
Now, over time, when you put these together, there will be a loss of elasticity to the metal.
Right.
Just like an RJ45, you do need to update and check these things, just like changing the brakes or the air filter in your car.
Yep.
And if you're in any kind of position, particularly in a commercial or rental job where it gets plugged and unplugged, long term, it's going to have an effect. So the better you start off with, and in the case of our MHX, the MHY, and the VLOX cables, with the little grips on the end of the terminal there, your chances of maintaining the integrity of that terminal increases dramatically.
Now, let's talk about this also because this is a feature that we have not had on our HDMI cables for very long.
2 years now.
2 years now. And so the reasoning behind that is kind of interesting. We had the option to do it before those 2 years.
Absolutely.
However, we did not want to get into it until we were sure that we knew how much pull pressure was necessary on those HDMI cables.
And we have still got some samples floating around here somewhere. I think I showed him to you. That when you unplugged it, it scared the heck out of me because I was afraid I was taking something out of a product.
Well, and I'm really glad that we didn't use it on here in the lab on this TV. We use it on a super cheap TV that we had just laying around, right? Because I did not want to give up a port on this TV.
And some of the cables are too tight. Now, you want a little additional, and when you look at what we've done on these, there's a little additional there in height and spring that makes a difference. But if it's too much, the possibility of damage, and that's why we held off as long as we did, is we did not want to damage anybody's gear.
Right. So, Leo, it's something that we're always looking at ways to expand our business and ways that we can get different products into your hands out there that solve problems or give you high quality. Yeah, it's something that we're definitely looking into. The main thing is that are you getting a demand for it? For his question is, are we going to be doing any kind of anything with silver or higher grade audio cables? And so, honestly,
there's some interesting things going on that we can't share with you right now. There's stuff that would have been introduced at CEDIA,
possibly.
So.
We'll see. But either way,
stay tuned.
Yeah, the main point with that is if you see a demand for things like that, let us know. And that goes across the board for just about anything. If you all see a demand for a certain product or a certain type of product, we want to know about it.
If there's something you need, tell us.
Yeah, exactly.
We are a dealer-driven company. Pretty much everything you see in our catalog is because somebody called up and said, hey, I have an idea or I have a problem. How do I fix this?
Keep going on that subject because the next
actually,
thing...
I want to talk a couple of things based on our Wednesday broadcast, which was bulk wire.
Right.
Now, talking on Wednesday, we talked about braid and foil, which you will see on this cable, the braid and the foil. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot again. Tell me what the braid does for me.
Now, I'm not going to get it purposefully wrong. I'm going to tell the correct answer to that. And with the braid, you are actually keeping out the lower frequencies.
Yes, you are. The braid is there to protect the cable from induced noise, 60-cycle hum, things like that. And the foil is there for?
To keep in the high frequencies.
And what does the high frequency noise do when it escapes?
It messes things up pretty badly.
Yes, it does.
Tell that story, because that's actually a really great story.
FCC actually has a spec for that called Part 15. This cable will generate a ton of noise. And we talked about it briefly on Wednesday, but if there's enough noise being generated because of poor shielding, it will interfere with IR, it will interfere with digital, it will interfere with analog audio. As we mentioned in Wednesday's broadcast, we were working off-site at our previous location and wondering why our remote sometimes worked and sometimes didn't.
Right.
As we were testing different HDMI cables, and it came down to shielding because the cable only had a braid to protect it from outside stuff, did not have the foil around all the high speed feeds to protect the world from it, and it was walking right over the IR cables.
Right. Which was actually kind of an interesting concept, and you actually called up the manufacturer, URC, and
they didn't know.
They had no idea, and
they were wondering why it was happening.
Probably solved a lot of answers for them. Gave them answers for that.
They were like, "Thank you."
Leo's actually got another really good question, or a suggestion. Actually, he says we should make an adapter that fits onto HDMI cables that allows you to screw in to the commercial HDMI connections. So that security point to it.
The drawback is we've gotten into higher bandwidth. Every connection point increases loss. So if you're dealing with 1080p, it's wonderful.
Right.
Dealing with basic 4K, you're probably still safe. But once we broke that 1.4 or 10 gig barrier, every additional piece, unless it is a circuit board based piece, when you look at the Junior 3, and this, by the way, is a Junior.
Right.
Actually, a Junior Plus, I think.
Yep, Junior Plus.
When you look at the Junior 3, it is a circuit board. There's not jumpers, there's not wires in it. It's a circuit board to minimize loss.
Correct. Now, I think what he's talking about actually is the security screw on that. So it.
Well, then that he's going to answer now.
This is this is actually an older piece. This is from our CES display. This is the 100-meter new 48 gig VLOX cable. I think you're talking about this piece here that actually allows you, and I'm going to bring that up a little bit closer. You got that? It's all right. So that there actually has the ability to then screw onto anything that has that security on it as well. But you can also take this off the back of the HDMI cable if you're using it just with a standard device that doesn't have that.
A lot of matrices or AVRs don't have room for that.
Correct, yeah. So Leo, that's definitely something that we are have in mind.
That is part of the new 8K VLOX cable.
Right, and in fact, we are looking at the possibility of having something similar to that. Again, if you guys see a demand for it, having something as an addition to the HDMI cables that don't have it. So say, for instance, our VLOX passive cables, which don't have that, maybe something that attaches to the end of it and then secures it to it. If that's something you guys are looking for, let us know, and see if that's a good idea for us to
now, I'm
develop.
Bring up something you showed me earlier, under the good, the bad, and mostly the ugly. We had a fiber that had been returned because of bandwidth issues.
Yes.
Until you unraveled that fiber.
Yes.
Don't dig it up. I know you wrapped it up.
Stuart actually, he's using it for another demonstration purpose. But yeah, so we got in, and a lot of this is going to come down to this. This is actually part of the ugly portion to it. So while HDMI cable construction, we can do a lot with what we have, and we can do some amazing things with it, like our high-end, silver line or our VLOX line of cables. However, depending on who is installing it and how they are installing it is really what comes down to the ugly portion to it. If you are installing it in an application where you are grabbing the cable and you're yanking it through an installation, you're going to damage that cable, and it becomes an ugly installation because the cable itself can stop working.
Whether it's copper or fiber.
Exactly. Now, you can have a very basic HDMI cable, again, a passive VLOX cable, or even if you get into our MHX or MHY line, which is, for us, a very standardized cable. Now, if you were to still take that cable and put too much pull strain on it, you're going to actually unravel the twist ratio inside of the HDMI cable and stretch it out. Now, on top of that, with fiber optics, it's much more important. But if you were to take a cable, and I'm not going to do it to this one because this is a good testing one that I'm using, but this one here, and as always, guys, we are in our lab. This is a real location for us. This is where we do our work. That's why I'm going on and off camera a couple times. This cable here, let me find where I did damage to it. I purposefully damaged this cable as a test.
It's one thing to hear these words, it's another to validate them.
Yes. So this here, we use this cable here to show kinks and strains and everything else that we do to these. And this bend point here is actually a point that I use whenever we're testing different systems to see what happens when we actually have damaged cables like this. So when you are doing the installation of these cables, it's very important to make sure that you have a wide turn radius.
Yes.
So
6-inch minimum.
6 inches minimum for anything.
Treat
Now,
it just like you do a category pole.
a category pole, or if you're doing fiber, again, fiber, we say a minimum of 6 inches. And in fact, we would want higher than that if possible.
12 is optimum.
Right. So with that being said, just be mindful that as you're running these cables, make sure you're actually pulling them not with too much force, you know, a good solid force to it, but nothing, you know,
25
no
pounds is
jerking
really
force or
all you
anything
really
like that.
want to smooth, steady 25
Right.
pounds. Now,
Right.
the cable he's talking about earlier was coming back. It's a 4K cable, but it was only getting 720 and 1080i.
Right.
And it's like, well, okay, so we started looking at the cable. As you unravel it, you can see where the cable physically had been twisted around because you're following the jacket of the cable getting spun.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's really obvious what happened.
Yeah.
And of course, they will of course say that didn't happen, but
Well, and that's another matter entirely. But it literally, as you, because you've got on the outside of the jacket of the HDMI cables, you have the lettering that actually tells you what the cable is. So whether it's plenum rated or riser rated and all that kind of information. And literally, it was twisted like you were wringing out a towel. It was twisted, and you could actually see within a couple, you know, just a couple inches, it was twisted all the way around to where the lettering started and then ended on the same side. It was actually frightening a little bit to see that done to one of our cables. So we're very protective over our stuff. But
now let's discuss the good.
yes,
Would you give me an overhead
I will.
and step slightly away so that
Yep.
we are maintaining our social distancing?
Now, while you're doing that, Leo's got a really cool thing. He
Okay.
says when he was doing a job for an office in downtown Wilmington, he was able to pick up a radio station on the wires as they were toning them. And the job had to be completely redone with double shielded cables.
Remember Wednesday I talked about the length of the wire?
Yep, yep. So in that case, Leo, was that a Cat 5 speaker wire, or was that an HDMI cable? Let me know in the chat.
Okay, now, going to be doing some drawing here, and I'm not very good at this.
Okay.
But when you look at an HDMI cable, and this is the good, the bad, and the ugly part, an HDMI cable has 4 high-speed channels. Now, those 4 high-speed channels are basically an XLR configuration.
Correct.
What that means is you have a TX, an RX, and a ground, and they are woven together. Now, this is really going to look bad.
Pretty close. Pretty good idea, anyways.
Now,
you're getting there.
The twist ratio is very critical for a couple of things. First off, we have to deal with inter and interpair skew. Now, intra and interpair are the same problem, but 2 different ways of getting there. When you look at a twist ratio on a cable, these crossover points are very important. That twist ratio has to be, unlike my drawing, that twist ratio has to be consistent all the way down on the same horizontal and X mark. So X and Y has to be the same spacing all the way down. Now, when you're looking at a single twist in a cable, in a single cable, that's called intrapair skew. If those twist ratios wind up being like my drawing, there will be timing errors within that individual cable. RX and TX will not be the same. They're not going to mirror image each other. Interpair skew, excuse me, is between multiple. I'm terrible at this. Multiple pairs of wires. In the case of HDMI 2.0, that's 3 sets. In the case of HDMI 2.1, it's 4 sets.
Right.
So the quality of build inside of the cable becomes very critical because you have to get the twist ratios right just inside of a given pair, and you also have to get all 4 pairs correctly. Now, when this doesn't happen is when you start running into problems. And the higher the bandwidth, the higher the resolution, the higher the color depth, the greater the chance of failure.
Right.
So it may work at 1080p, it may work at basic 4K. Now, here's where it gets even more exciting, particularly as we move into 2.1.
Right.
If your cable's not real consistent, it may work at 4K, but not another version of 4K, a lower version, or 1080. So you can lose lower frequencies, not higher frequencies, based on the equalization within the television and the quality of the cable.
Now, we actually had somebody comment and question about that after the fact, and this was not, I don't remember if it was Monday's episode or if it was Wednesday's episode or last week's episode. They actually left us a comment on there talking about, or asking us to talk about the equalization and the information about that.
Now, equalization is one of these things that they are still being very gray from HDMI on.
Right.
They have not fully explained or committed or admitted
Right.
exactly what's going on there, but here's what we think is happening. Now, there are 4 high-speed channels that are being used under HDMI 2.1. Inside of each of those channels, there are 8 equalization curves. Now, the reason for this, plain and simply, is retail. Retailers don't want to get TVs back because of something they can't control.
Right.
And to the vast majority of consumers, if there's a picture, it's done, it's good.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is this. At each resolution, in each of the sets, they have 8 equalization curves. Now, an equalization curve is how much boost they're adding to the cable at the display side based on a given resolution. The higher the resolution, the more the boost, because it's an expected roll-off of data. So I'm going to do a pretty basic one here. We're going to start up here because I'm going to run out of space.
Yep.
So when we get to 10 gig under 2.0, it drops, they assume, at 25 dB at 18. Now that's a fixed curve. And that's created some problems because if there are TVs that have very sensitive equalization, meaning you can be too loud into them.
Right.
And there are TVs that have very insensitive.
Right.
Meaning you may be too quiet and they don't know what you're saying. So in the next version, to minimize these failures from a retail standpoint, there are going to be multiple equalization curves. To vary the different resolutions. Now there are 8 curves for each set of wires. The reason they're doing this is for cumulative data. We think.
We think.
We think. Now
this is actually interesting, everybody, because we don't normally go into these types of details because this is something that we work on in the background. So it's really becoming informative for us to want to get this information out there for you out in the field. And that's why we're getting into this information, because again, these are things that you as the installer or you as the consumer are going to run into out in the field. So definitely pay attention to this because this is what we will be seeing very shortly.
Up.
Got to draw it up above?
Yep. So the ultimate goal is 48 gig.
Right.
This is where we want to be, which means we want to get to 12 gigs per channel by 4. Now here's the thing. Let's say your channels are not all 12.
Right.
Let's say you're only getting 6 out of 1.
Right.
You might be getting 9 out of 2.
Right.
You might get 12 out of 3 and 10 out of 4. Now, you might get 12 out of 12 if you've got a good quality cable, but the assumption is you're not going to have a good quality cable. So at this number we've got it's 22, 31, 37. So at 37, the TV's going to adjust itself, tell the source, give me this level of data.
Right.
So there's still going to be a picture.
Yeah. Now it may not be.
It's not going to be as good as this picture, but But the vast majority of users will not know. Will not notice that. Thank you.
So with that in mind, Brent, and actually we were having this discussion earlier with John when we were talking about how it's going to be asking for a lower bandwidth worth of information. How is it going to do that? Is it going to be something like the subsampling, the chroma subsampling, or is it going to do something else?
Yes.
Yes?
We don't know what it's going to be because it's going to vary depending on the bandwidth requirements. It could be a lower refresh rate.
Right.
It could look at a cumulative refresh rate and say, okay, instead of 60 frames per second, we're going to go down to 30.
Right.
Or it could mean that we're going to go from 444 to 422 or 420.
Right.
We don't know. That's going to be negotiated based on the level of data that can make it from the source to the display between the two of them.
Right.
And that's why when you look at HDMI 2.1, there's so much more going on in the EDID background.
Yes.
Now, for the first time, there's going to be EDID in places other than the EDID channels.
So we're actually going to be getting EDID down like
down CEC channels
Okay.
and other places because there's so much more happening now.
Right.
That we can no longer handle it just on the EDID channels.
Right. And then, of course, as we move into that, we'll have the solution tools to be able to handle
now,
that. So
if you're using the Velox passive cables,
Right.
you're already in a phenomenal position going forward to handle anything you need to deal with.
Right.
Now,
And actually,
right now,
this is an older one.
yeah, because they're a darker blue now.
There we are.
The half 1.5, 2 meters are 48 gig.
Yes.
Up to 10 meters if you use our GA2, you will be able to get out to 48.
Correct.
Now,
Yeah.
the other nice thing, particularly when you're using the GA2, because we might have to deal with a bad or an ugly cable
Right.
with the GA2.
Right.
So if it's a cable that may not be as good as ours,
Yep.
you can actually adjust input sensitivity to match the cable and output gain to match, or the output signal to match the input of the television.
So that way we can actually make sure that even a bad or an ugly cable, and the ugly, talking about a damaged cable,
Right.
technically we can actually
Or a poor
assist with
design.
that.
You
Yeah.
can have a functioning cable that's just a poorly designed cable, meaning
Right.
the shielding's not correct.
Right.
It will still function, but you have to worry about other things in the process. Now, the shorter that is, the better. And one of the things, we were talking about, John, who runs our Heist lighting division,
Yep.
bought a new TV and has some questions. So Adam and I were going over stuff that he should know. And the not uncommon, but digital's digital, right? I mean, just any HDMI cable is going to work.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. No.
No.
So now one of the things that we kind of want to get into possibly and talk about, and let us know in the comments, let us know in the chat section if you think it's a good idea for us to do that. How would you like us to break down the actual physical properties of these HDMI cables, the physical pieces to these cables, whether it be the copper inside, whether it be how the inside the head shell works and all that kind of stuff? Let us know down in the chat in the comments. Is that something that you want to see? And in fact, I'm going to put out another call out or a call to action. Brent and I are going to be working on another possible series for you all. It's going to be part of the Tech Tips series. However, what it's going to be about is it's going to be about a what's the best way to put it? We're going to be talking about a new hire who's going to be starting doing work with an AV company.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about
what you should have
as a new
basic knowledge, basic hand tools.
Yep.
What should be in the vehicle he's working in.
Right.
Now, and so we were discussing this yesterday.
Yep.
And my assumption is a new hire is the second seat in a vehicle.
Right.
He's going to be out pulling wire, maybe drilling some holes.
Yep.
And he's going to be doing that for 6 months or so. What does he need to start building up in his toolkit?
Yep.
So that when he becomes an integrator or an installer,
Yep.
and you send him out alone, what does he need to have on his truck that he owns or that you're providing him?
Right.
To get the job done.
Yeah.
What parts, what pieces, what tools.
So we're asking you to go out and on all of our social media, the best, however you'd like to reach out to us, and let us know what you think are primary tools that, as a new hire, they should have with them. And what we'll do is we're going to compile all of this together, and we're going to have it all pulled together, and we're actually going to do an entire episode and possibly multiple episodes.
Because our discussions yesterday were very divergent.
Yeah, it actually varied a little bit. So we'll compile a nice little list, and maybe we'll even share that list out to everybody who they're looking for, a way to say, my business is growing. It's now not just myself. I'm now ready to hire on somebody else. What should I have for them available, or what should I require of them to have? And I think that's something that we should really talk about.
And again, from my standpoint, it's day one and 6 months later when hopefully you can send the guy out on his own.
Right.
Because in 6 months, there's a lot to learn, and he should be buying some tools.
Right. So definitely let us know what you guys think about that as well. So
now, let's talk a little bit more about cables, because we carry several series.
Right.
MHX, MHY, Velox, and Install Bay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are some significant differences in them. When you look at, would you grab me an MHY cable, please?
I will,
sir?
yeah.
When you look at our cables, MHX and MHY are both utilitarian products. The MHX...
This is MHY.
Do we have an MHX over
That's
there?
what I'm getting for you next.
The MHX is my go-to for most jobs because it is a phenomenal performance for the cost. It's a tremendous value wire. It, however, is not the thinnest wire. So if you're in a tight environment, it can be a little tough to deal with. However, for value, it's our least expensive real cable, and it's an excellent performance. However, If you need to go smaller, let's say you're working in a rack or in a tight cabinet, the MHY is there.
Right.
Now the MHY offers a substantially smaller head shell. We both went to hit it and neither did.
Yep.
The MHY offers a much smaller head shell, which is great when you're in a tight area. It also offers a lot tinier diameter on the cable.
Yes.
So if you're doing a rack or again in a tight media cabinet, it does make a difference.
Right.
Now, it does cost more to get the same level of performance from tiny as from thicker.
Right. But that's a normal thing.
And that's the value that the MHX offers, is the cost for performance. If, however, you need that tinier gauge, the MHY is an excellent choice, but you do spend a little bit more for it, but you also get a lot tighter fit.
Right.
Smaller head shell, smaller cable. Now, the V-Lux kind of walks between those two. It's not as small of a head shell as the MHY, but slightly smaller than the MHX, and about the same gauge, but a higher performance level. With the MHX, you're limited to 7.5 meters to get to 24 gigabit.
Yes.
With the V-Lux passive, you can go to a full 10 meters, no added anything to get to 24 gigabits, which is the entry level to HDMI 2.1 and anything offered within HDMI 2.0.
Right.
So the 3 levels give you a great, good, better, best to go to. And then once you go to fiber, the whole world changes.
Yeah, everything changes at that point. Now, with the fiber, the cool thing is, and this is going into the construction of it, one of the things that you notice when you compare, in fact, I'm going to take this back, when you compare the size of the diameter of the cable itself, when you go from a copper passive cable, and this one here is roughly about 3 meters on that, and then if you go to one of our, let's see, what do I have an install bay over here?
Well,
I
here.
have one right here. No, right here. I'll do this one. So when you compare these, the diameter of the cabling, we're going from a couple meters on the passive the passive MHX cable to 50 feet with this one here, and in fact, much longer than that. You're going to be going up to, this one can go up to 260 feet. Is available with this, with the same diameter, because with the inside the construction of the cabling, the fiber only has 4 strands for the high-speed data for the TMDS lines. Now, with the TMDS lines, of course, that's what we call the high speed. That's what the data for the actual video that you're watching
And sound
is traveling down. Now, like Brent was saying, on a standard copper cable, it's an XLR fashion, so it's actually 3 strands inside of a standard copper passive HDMI cable, and even a copper active HDMI cable. And so you actually have the extra space taken up by those TMDS lines. Whereas with the fiber, the size of one of these TMDS lines from a copper is the size of all 4 channels inside of a fiber cable itself. Yes.
By the way, the foil's so tightly wrapped on that, I can't get it off.
You can't get, okay, you can't
get
open
it
it
off.
Nice.
I was going to open it up, but on the V-Lux, it is so tightly wrapped for all the protection.
Yep. And so it just makes,
I can't get it off.
So when you are dealing with construction for how you're going to be getting a cable to a certain location, there's a lot of give and take and finding the sweet spot for which cable is for the best position. So looking at the construction of a passive cable, if you're okay with a little bit of a larger cable, a passive cable is a great position to be in, because you can use other devices like the GA1 or the GA2
to give you the distance and the performance.
Exactly, to get you up to the bandwidth that you need to be at with that. Now,
and generally for less money.
Yeah, for less money. Now, of course, if you're inside of a rack or a very tight space, you can use the MHY line of cables, because the construction of these cables, the gauge of wire inside of these is much smaller than what you would see inside of the MHX line, and that's why we can get down to a much smaller size with that. But you lose your distance. So if you go into the longer distances with these cables, then at that point it's actually going to expand with our MHX line. So, or sorry, our MHY.
Now there is a very flexible fiber option, which is the Helios. Now, the Helios is officially our retail brand, but it also fills in some very nice niches inside of the custom installation.
Yes.
This is a full AOC fiber cable, just in a shorter length, cosmetically very attractive with the cloth jacket on it. And I like the cloth jackets, because if you're having to pull a wire in a tight area, That cloth jacket just makes it so much easier than
yeah, it just kind of slides right on through. Now, I actually am opposite thinking of that, because for me, whenever I'm running a cable with a jacket on it, I don't like it for it to snag. So I'm actually on the opposite thought process with that. So that kind of is helpful. Little no see him there.
I didn't see him.
Yeah, neither did I. Yeah, Leo, we're working on that. That's the next big project that we're working on. Next tool that we're going to be bringing in, cable stretcher.
Oh, well, and this is something Stuart and I have been working on for 10 years.
Yes.
And the goal is to get at least a 50% stretch.
Yes, yes.
And we have to be able to sell it for $24.99.
Yes. Yep, $24.99. 50% stretch. Yep.
Fit in your pocket.
Yep. Put it in your pocket, and you're good to go.
In fact, you know what we'll call it the Leo 2.
The Leo 2.
The Leo 2.
Leo, there you go, man. It's all. We're naming it after you.
So that sounds good.
Yeah. For a copper HDMI,
yes.
What repair options do you have if the head shell breaks?
Do you want to do this one, or should I do this one?
So, none. You can call up the drywaller and have them cut open the drywall so you can put a new one in. Unfortunately, the reality is that the bandwidths that are necessary, and we've talked about this a couple times actually, the bandwidths that are necessary if you were to go in there and use the self DIY repair kits that are out there that have like the screw down terminals or give you nice soldering pads to work with and do that, it may work at a 480 or a 720. Maybe a 1080p?
That's a big maybe. But
yeah, it's a really big maybe. But as soon as you get into anything above even a 720, honestly, at that point, and 720 would be a big push on that.
There's a lot more failures than successes.
Yes. So the reality is that unfortunately there's not a good way to
Which is
fix
why
or
you
repair
always
that.
want to pull at least a Cat 6 or Cat 6A along with your HDMI cables.
Yep, and now we're actually running into recommending doing Cat 5, Cat 6 with it, and fiber, running a piece of fiber with it.
And ultimately, fiber, even if it's a shorter one like this, is awesome because inside of this are 4 individual fibers. And even if you break one, you still got fibers left to use on an extender with LC terminals, and we've covered that in previous episodes.
Exactly. So, with all that to say, we're kind of coming up with on the edge of our time that we can work with today. But if you all have any other questions or any other comments and stuff, please put it down in the comments or the chat section so we can get to those as well. Again, thank you for checking in with us today. If you have anything that you have run into in the field with an HDMI cable, like we were talking about earlier, where you got something weird, like the audio has gone out on it, or maybe you see some sparkles on the screen, whether it be white sparkles or red sparkles or blue sparkles, green sparkles. At that point, let us know and see down in the comments in the chat section below. And in fact, I think one of the videos that we're looking at doing is what happens when something goes wrong with an HDMI cable. Why does it go wrong?
Okay.
So that's a pretty heavy one. I mean, there's a couple things to talk about with that, but we'll see about doing that later on.
Now,
so,
for any more information, I'm available. Guys, do not hesitate to call. Adam actually has to work long and hard every day and takes calls all day long.
Yep.
Much more than I do. So if you're looking for a little bit more education on HDMI specifically, do not call and ask me about Spyclops.
Yeah.
I know we sell it. But for HDMI,
right?
I'm available to you guys. I'm happy to take the time and give you a better background in it. And if there's a specific thing you request, we're happy to do videos on it. We want you guys to understand what, why, and how so that your installations are successful. That's really what this is about. We just want you to get your money, get out, and not have to go back.
Yep, pretty much. That's the idea. So, guys, thank you again for checking in with us. Next week, we are going to be talking about infrared repeater systems and infrared in general and how it works. We are also going to be talking about speaker level distribution. So that means
both of those are good analog classes.
Yeah, actually, we're going to be talking about this piece here. This is the
you picked the worst box.
I did. Yeah, I know. This is the 1x6 speaker selector. We're going to be talking about how that works into your systems, how volume controls work into your systems. And as you guys know,
there's still a lot of IR out there.
There is, yes. So definitely check us out. That's going to be Wednesday at 3 p.m. of next week Eastern Time, and then Friday at 3 p.m. as well Eastern Time. We'll be talking about those two subjects with that there. So As always, you can contact us here through our tech support line, 386-492-8584. You can email me at adamr@metra, or you can get in contact with Brent, 866-839-9187, extension
2203.
and or you can email him at brentm@metrohometheatergroup.com.
Reboot early.
Reboot often.
I'm Brent.
Almost. Label your.
Please label your wires, and don't cut them too short.
Don't cut. Leave your wires long. Label everything. Don't forget to reboot early and reboot often.
I'm Brent.
I'm Adam.
Have a great weekend.
We'll see y'all later.
Thank you.